Hello friends, welcome back to another episode in my pattern drafting series where I am taking you along on my experience learning digital pattern making, kind of just sharing what I am learning along the way, my own experience through taking the Confident Pattern Making and Grading course. I filmed an introductory video, which was episode 1 of the series, so you can click over and watch that video to learn more. There's also details down in the description of this video and links specifically to this course and to Victoria's website so that you can read in her own words all about the Confident Pattern Making and Grading course. This is episode 4, and in today's video I'm going to be working on grading my pants block. So in my last video I worked on grading my front and back bodice block, which also included the skirt block because that's kind of factored in and graded and drafted into the bodices, which is nice. It like cuts down your time because in the past I've graded bodices separately from skirts and I feel like this method is a lot better. I also graded my sleeve, so those are all set aside. I think everything is good to go on those. We will test out all the measurements and sizing when I work on creating the pattern for a button-up shirt and sewing that up. But before I do so, while I'm in the groove of grading, I'm going to grade my pants. Now, I have never actually graded pants before. I've only ever done bodices, sleeves, and skirts. I've graded pants with my students and helped them through the grading process of grading pants based on their measurements multiple times over my 4 years being a fashion design teacher. But I've never done it for myself, mainly because I love skirts and dresses the most. I never really had a need to make my own kind of custom pants pattern because the types of pants that I wanted, I usually found patterns that I really liked. If you've been following me on social media for any amount of time or any of my videos, you know that I'm obsessed with the Lane Pants pattern by Sydney Graham. I think now I probably have like 6 different variations of those pants and I've hacked them to make a ton of different styles. So when I find a pattern that I love, I usually just keep making that over and over, especially when it comes to pants. However, I am excited to learn the process of grading pants. I feel like one kind of mindset shift I've had through taking this course, or encourage myself to have through taking this course is even if maybe I feel like I'm not going to use pants blocks or I'm not super interested in creating any kind of pants patterns, I still want to go through the process to understand the grading process digitally for every single kind of pattern so that I have those skills, regardless of if I use them frequently or use them less frequently. And for the pants block, I feel like that might be one that I use less frequently. However, every single thing that I feel like I'm learning in this course is just growing my understanding and knowledge of pattern drafting more and more so that it becomes almost like this kind of second just easy skill the more that you do things and you practice them and you reiterate them. So I'm excited to learn how to do the pants draft and also to kind of take that and if I wanted to make a really great fitting pair of pants as someone who is over 5'9", who is long-legged, long-waisted, whose legs are definitely not a proportional size to my torso because my legs, if I were to look at a size chart and take my measurements, my legs typically fall anywhere from a size like 8 to 10 based on my hips. My waist is like a size 4, sometimes less, and then my torso is like a size 4 to 6. So it's not proportional at all, and that is one awesome thing about learning to create and grade my own patterns is that I'm creating patterns based on a real body, my body. Everyone else who's taking this course is grading and creating and drafting patterns based on their measurements and their body. And that is something that can be really frustrating in the clothing and fashion industry today. And even in the realm of like commercial patterns is that when you look at a size chart, you realize you're between sizes or you span 3 different sizes based on your measurements of your bust, your waist, and your hips. And so you're trying to figure out what size you're going to make. And so learning how to do this digital grading, all of my patterns that I am creating are based on my measurements, and then if I were to grade those, they would be graded on a size range where anyone in that size range could make them, but originally they're based on my measurements, which is a real body. And I really, really love that because I have definitely struggled with finding pants my entire life that were long enough, that fit proportionally, not just my hips, but also my waist, because usually when I find something that fits my hips, it doesn't fit my waist. So I do have kind of an idea of sewing up my own pair of maybe like jeans or something at some point, because I have a fun idea for those. So we'll see if I get around to creating a pattern for that, but definitely I'm going to work through the pants block, do the fitting on that, figure out everything that needs to be worked out for my pants block, and then I'll move on to my bodice. But with all that being said, I'm going to dive in and start the process. Now, I already took all of my measurements, and you probably saw a time lapse of me taking all of my measurements in the last episode where I was drafting out my bodice and my sleeve. You take all your measurements at once, so I'm going to refer back to my measurement chart to get my hips and my hip depth and my waist and my pants length and all those different measurements that I need for the drafting process. All right, I'm about to start drafting my pant blocks. I have all the updated measurements for drafting of my pant block, so things like my waist, my hips, my waist to my knee length, my waist to my ankle length, or the length I would want of pants, my knee circumference, my hip depth, things like that, because those are all the points that are going to be drafted out to create the pants. So we'll see how this goes. Alright, I just drafted the front pants, and actually the pants were pretty easy to draw. I think because pants have more like straight edges and lines to them. You have a couple of curves like at your crotch and your hips, but compared to like your sleeve and your bodice block, the pants are a lot straighter, and I feel like there are less lines that are like intersecting with each other. So that was probably my quickest draft. Now I'm going to draft the back pants off of the front, and we'll see if that also goes quickly. Okay, finished drafting my back pants block, and it was also pretty easy because you're just drawing lines out from pre-existing lines. So out of the bodice block, the sleeve, and the pants, so far I think the pants are the easiest to draft. Now, if you make a mock-up, then you have to figure out like, are things actually fitting how they're supposed to, and then make the adjustment. So I think that's where things would get like a little tricky. My pants blocks look pretty good from what I'm observing, and so I don't think I need to make like any really major tweaks to them based on things that weren't going right. So that's really good. I'm going to take a break for today. Tomorrow I'm going to work on adding all of my notches to my pants block, and then also adding my seam allowance and truing the pants. So that's the last step of drafting the pants. Okay, so we are continuing on with my pants. I have now drafted them out, added seam allowance, and trued all of the seams. And if you aren't familiar with truing and pattern making, truing is essentially where you overlay like a front and a back piece of a pattern at the points and edges that they would be pinned and sewn together at, and you make sure that all of the edges align where there isn't any like excess that's overlapping an edge or an edge that is shorter. So that's part of truing, and then also making sure all of your notches for where you're supposed to pin fabric together at side pieces is matched up. So I've done all of that, and actually adding the seam allowance to the pants, I don't know if I talked about this yet, was way easier than I thought. Like, oh my gosh. I always thought that like adding seam allowance and stuff to digital patterns was going to be like difficult, and it's not as hard as I thought. So now that everything is trued, I need to actually create a toile, a muslin, a mock-up, however you choose to label those and say those. I usually just say mock-up and actually try them on to see if all of my measurements and my drafting actually fit my body how they're supposed to. So in order to create a mock-up, that means I need to, so in order to create a mock-up of my pants, that means I actually need to print them out and be able to have a pattern that I can cut out of fabric. So there's two ways I can do that. One way is that I can project them onto fabric, which is my plan for the future, is to essentially just project all of my patterns so I don't have to make copies anymore. But I'm currently waiting on the cord for my projector so that I can connect it to my laptop and actually project patterns. So that means that I actually have to print out these pattern pieces in order to create a pattern and cut it out of fabric. And that means that I have to take my drafted pants and convert them and turn them into a PDF pattern that I can print. Now, having this drafted pair of pants and looking at like this full pair of pants and wondering how in the world am I going to turn that into individual pieces of paper that I print seems really overwhelming and daunting. But in the course, Victoria and Jess walk you through how you format your pattern for printing, and it's actually so insanely easy. So there's something called a tiling template, which if you are familiar with Adobe Illustrator, a tiling template is essentially multiple artboards. A tiling template is essentially multiple artboards all like attached together from like left to right, up and down. So on Adobe, it looks kind of like a puzzle, but they're all just like regular pieces of paper. So anyways, you have that tiling template and you just like overlay your drafted pattern onto that. You move your pattern pieces around to make sure you accommodate for all of the space. And then you save that as a PDF, open it in Adobe PDF Reader, make sure it's set to 100%, and then print it off. And that's essentially how you make a PDF printable pattern from your drafted pattern pieces. Insanely easy. I'm so excited to take these skills and make like printable patterns. Yeah, it's just so fun learning these skills and like understanding how all the PDF patterns that I love to print and sew with were originally made by pattern designers, and now having that skill for myself. So anyways, enough talking. I'm going to go print off that pattern. I'll show you what it looks like because honestly, I'm just like so thrilled and excited, and there's like such a sense of accomplishments like printing off your first like pattern and then assembling it. Then we're going to cut it out of fabric, and then I'm going to sew up those pants and fit them to see where I might need to make adjustments. Then I'm going to have to make those adjustments on the actual pattern. So the pants are almost done, but I want to get all of kind of the details for the pants figured out before I move on to my actual mock-up button-up shirt to test my bodice block. So let's go print off the pants pattern. Alright, so I taped all my pattern pieces together, so what I was seeing on my computer screen is now brought to life. So I just need to cut out these pants, and then I'm going to cut them out of fabric and sew it up. Okay, I just sewed up the pants. I put them on right side out. Here's how they're looking and fitting. All right, I have like a little slit in the front so I can actually put them on. They are super high-waisted, but I specifically drafted them that way because you have kind of the ability and freedom to like make the crotch seam and rise like however long you want based on your measurements. So anyways, I love high-waisted pants. Obviously these are mock-ups, so you can adjust anything to them, but I do like this. So they have darts here in the front, here, and then this is the back, which honestly looks insanely good. Yeah, and then we have the hips area. So if I were to pin this closed, however it would be sewn, I need to see my fitting options. I think that these darts need to maybe get tightened, although I can tighten the hips. I feel like this inseam is good. Doesn't, I don't know, maybe that's too like baggy right there. So maybe you need to play around with that or just pull this up a bit more. Not bad. So maybe I should take a little bit of length off the top. I don't know if I need to adjust a ton in the hips. I don't know, if I were making a fitted pants, I think I would, but considering everything that I'd be making with these pants, I think that all the measurements might be okay. I need to go look at the adjustments for like how you're supposed to fit it, but there's not a lot that needs to be taken up. So anyways, those are my first self-drafted pants, and honestly, like, they're pretty great fitting pair of pants. Because I, as someone who is tall, has long legs, and I've mentioned this in videos before, I think, that like my legs proportionally are different from my torso size-wise. My torso's like between a 2 and a 4. Like full body is usually around a 6, but then pants are usually like around an 8 or so. So yeah, these fit really well, and I really don't think I would make like any major adjustments to them, except maybe shortening them a bit. There is seam allowance built in up here, so I'm not sure if it's totally necessary. Okay, so I put my pants on inside out because it's easier to pin adjustments that you need to make. So these are the adjustments I think I would actually transfer to my pattern. So I just put some pins. It's only like maybe a centimeter in at the hips. I think that the waist needs to shift down a bit and these darts need to shift down. I don't know, it just seems like really bunchy right here. Or maybe I need to take away fabric here or something. But definitely need to do something with the hips. So these are the adjustments I'm going to transfer to my pattern. All right, I finished making all the adjustments to my pant block. As much as I've said, oh, pants are so easy to draft, they are. But I had to go through and make adjustments from my mock-up to my like drafted pattern pieces, which meant redrawing some lines, changing up seam allowance, retruing them. That took a little bit of time. I'm not going to reprint these and sew up another mock-up. Probably should. If I play around with like a custom pants pattern for myself, I probably will sew up a new mock-up. But because I feel like the adjustments I made were so minor, I'm not going to sew mock-up at this time. So that is the completion of drafting my pants and making my mock-up and doing my pants block. So that is the end of this installment and episode where I am going through drafting out my custom perfect pants block for pants pattern. So we'll see if I play around with the pants pattern in the future. I do have an idea for like a fun pair of jeans that I really want to turn into a pattern, but I want to work on my dress idea for a pattern first. So anyways, I'm very pleased with how they fit. Now I'm going to set my pants aside and I'm going to pick up my bodice and my sleeves again, and now it's time to start the process of turning those into a button-up shirt pattern, and that is how I'm going to be able to test the fit and my drafting for my bodice block. So if you have any specific questions about pants drafting, or if you found something super interesting in this episode, I would love to know, so drop a comment below. If you ever drafted your own pants, I would love to know your experience, if you thought it was difficult or easy and you had a good experience with that, or maybe you want to learn how to draft your own pants in the future. I would love to chat about that in the comments. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, and make sure, as always, that you are subscribed to my channel so that you don't miss out on any new videos or content of sewing tutorials, behind the scenes, vlogs, and thrifting. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Happy sewing! Bye!